A man walks into a car dealership, muddy boots, faded jeans, and a tired face, like he just came off a construction shift. No one knows he owns the entire building. They ignore him, look down on him, treat him like he couldn't afford to look at a car, let alone buy one. But just a few hours later, the entire dealership will be shaken when they realize the man they dismissed is the CEO. And what happens next isn't just a firing. It's the start of a quiet but deep reckoning, a wake-up call for a system that thought it was doing everything right. No one knew that the man who just pulled up outside the Chevrolet GMC showroom in a dusty old blue Ford Ranger was actually the owner of the entire place. Malcolm Reed, 47, CEO of the largest auto dealership chain in the region, was on a secret visit. No tie, no expensive suit, just a man in worn-out jeans, a faded canvas jacket, and boots caked in dry red mud. The driver's seat of his truck was patched with duct tape, and the engine still ticked faintly as it cooled. He didn't want attention, and luckily, no one gave it. To them, he looked like someone just off a construction job, maybe a welder, maybe a roofer. One thing was certain, not the kind of premium customer they were used to serving. What they didn't know was that just 12 hours earlier, this same man had been in a boardroom, signing the payroll checks for every single employee in that building. Malcolm had bought the dealership 5 years ago, rebuilt the entire service center, hired a young team, paid them well, and pushed for a culture of fair, modern customer service. But lately, his trusted assistant, Tasha Green, had brought him 3 customer complaints in just 2 months, all from Black or Latino customers. They said they were ignored, spoken down to, or subtly refused service. Malcolm didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, a one-off mistake. But he had lived through those experiences himself, and something in his gut told him this wasn't just a fluke. So, he came. In the most ordinary disguise he could wear, to see with his own eyes what was really happening inside the model dealership he thought he had built. As Malcolm stepped through the large glass doors of the showroom, he immediately felt the quiet kind of prejudice that didn't need words. No one looked up, no greeting, no nod, no smile. A dry voice called out from the right side of the room, directed at the air more than at him. Need something? Malcolm turned. It was a man in his mid-30s, thinning hair, clipboard in hand. No smile, no approach. Just stood there, watching like he was sizing up a potential annoyance. Malcolm replied calmly, still in character as just another customer. I'm looking for a pickup truck. The man shrugged. New or used? Used. Another shrug. He jerked his head toward the sunlit lot outside, where rows of dusty trucks were parked. They're over there. And he walked away. No walkthrough, no introduction, no questions, no handshake, not even the bare minimum of respect. Malcolm nodded, not at the man, but to himself. He made his way toward the trucks. In the scorching Texas noon sun, he spotted a young white couple stepping out of a shiny black SUV. Early 30s, both in light polo shirts. Within seconds, a young sales rep, gelled hair, bright white teeth, fitted shirt, was jogging toward them like they were the VIPs of the day. Welcome to the dealership, he beamed. Can I offer you a cold drink or coffee? A sea inside is great right now. Malcolm heard every word, every warm tone. He stopped in front of a silver Sierra 1500, fairly new, just a small dent on the passenger side door. Price tag, $24,300. He crouched to check the tires. Then, from behind, the first salesman returned. Same slow walk, hands in pockets, barely interested. This one's all right. Been driven a lot, but still decent. Malcolm looked up. How many miles? Over 110,000. Maintenance record should be in the system. Want me to ask someone? Malcolm stood up, eyes scanning the scene. The young couple was still laughing with the cheerful rep, not even looking at any cars yet. Meanwhile, he, a quiet, polite customer, had to ask every question just to get the most basic info. I'd like to see the maintenance record, and if possible, I'd like to take it for a test drive. The man sighed, like Malcolm was inconveniencing him. All right, I'll grab the keys. As he walked off, Malcolm pulled out his phone, opened his notes app, and typed the first line, Silver Sierra 1500. Rep didn't know mileage, no records, no engagement. Complaint confirmed. This wasn't about catching anyone out. He was just looking for the truth, and the truth was already beginning to show, and it wasn't easy to swallow. 5 minutes later, Ross Mitchell, the indifferent salesman from earlier, returned, dangling a car key from one finger along with a crumpled printout. "Here, service history and keys," he said, like a tired admin clerk clocking his third shift of the day. No energy, no interest. Malcolm took the paper and skimmed it. The record was so bare it was almost useless. A few oil changes, a battery replacement, one tire rotation. More importantly, the service dates didn't align with the mileage. He folded the sheet and slid it into his back jeans pocket. "Thanks," he said, then looked up. "Mind if I ask a few things before I test drive it?" Ross glanced at him like Malcolm had just made an unreasonable request. "Ask what?" "Has the truck ever been in an accident? How many previous owners? When you said it runs fine, did you mean there's something wrong with it?" Ross let out a long sigh and shifted his weight. "Had a minor bump, nothing major. Last owner, maybe 2, maybe 3. Don't quote me. And no, nothing's wrong. I said it runs fine." Malcolm gave a faint, polite smile. "You did. I just want to be sure, since I'm the buyer." Another shrug. Ross's attitude hadn't changed. Still impatient, still cold. So much so that it didn't feel like one person being rude. It felt like a system functioning exactly as it was built. As Ross turned to leave, Malcolm spoke, quiet but clear. "If I were wearing a polo shirt and holding a lease agreement, would you speak to me differently?" The question dropped like a stone into still water. Ross froze, turned slightly, eyes flickering between confusion and annoyance. Was it a joke? An accusation? He didn't respond, just turned back and disappeared into the showroom without another word. Malcolm didn't stop him. He simply stood there, key in hand, watching the man fade away. The lot around him fell strangely quiet. Heat shimmered on the pavement. A truck horn echoed from the highway in the distance. Inside the building, a place Malcolm once poured his heart into, everything had just become far too clear. Malcolm opened the Sierra's door and got behind the wheel. The seat creaked, and the AC blew lukewarm air despite being set to cool. He adjusted the mirrors, took a deep breath, and eased the truck out onto the street. He wasn't testing the engine, he was thinking. Every push of the gas pedal, every turn of the wheel brought him back to the values he once built into this place. This dealership wasn't supposed to be just a car lot. To Malcolm, it had once been a symbol, a blueprint for fair, modern, trustworthy business. But what he'd just seen wasn't a fluke. It was a symptom of something deeper. It confirmed what Tasha had warned him about. Discrimination wasn't hiding in the corners. It was baked into the floor. Not just in the system, it was the system. When he circled back, Malcolm parked in the exact same spot. He walked through the glass doors again, the same blinding showroom lights, the same spotless white tile, the same sterile air conditioning and soft clicking of keyboards. The white couple was now settled into plush leather chairs, sipping from branded water bottles, focused on a big screen showing car models. Dylan Hayes, the eager young salesman, was still smiling wide, talking to them like old friends. No one in the room looked up as Malcolm walked by. No receptionist, no manager, no one. He might as well have been a ghost. He walked straight to the reception desk. "I just test drove the silver 2016 Sierra, 110,000 miles, he said. "I'd like to move forward with the next steps." The receptionist, Megan Lowell, slim, hair tied up high, looked up as if he'd interrupted her. She typed a few keys, gave a curt nod, no smile. "I'll find someone to assist you." A minute later, Ross Mitchell returned. Same clipboard, same drained expression, like he'd just come back to a boring chore. "You want to talk numbers, huh?" Ross said, gruff. They walked over to a side table near an old filing shelf. Malcolm sat down. The chair groaned again. Ross started typing, fingers slow and careless. "You financing or cash?" "Cash." Ross looked up, mildly surprised. "Really? Is that a problem?" "No, just not many do that." Malcolm leaned slightly forward, calm voice. "I'm not most people." They started negotiating. Ross tried to bundle every add-on possible. Extended warranty, rust-proof undercoat, tinted windows. Malcolm refused them all, politely but firmly. He'd worked in this industry too long to fall for those upsells. As they spoke, Malcolm's gaze drifted to a corner near the entrance, and his chest tightened. A young man stood quietly by the door, early 20s, black, worn hoodie, wrinkled jeans, a folder clutched in his hands, clearly waiting, clearly a customer. No one approached, no hello, no smile, no acknowledgement. The young man lingered a few seconds, then turned and walked out, without saying a word. Malcolm clenched his jaw, but he said nothing, not yet. He turned back as Ross slid a paper across the table. If everything looks good, sign here. Malcolm reached for the pen. Then a voice called out, loud enough to stop the room. Why does he get service, but I've been waiting 10 minutes and no one's even looked at me? Silence. No one spoke, no one smiled, no one looked away. Because in that moment, every polite excuse and every branding slogan fell apart. And from that moment forward, Malcolm Reed was no longer just another customer. The entire showroom suddenly froze after that remark. The one who had spoken up, Nick Harmon, a white customer standing near the reception, looked at Malcolm with anger burning in his eyes. But Malcolm Reed remained seated, unmoved, his hand loosely holding the pen, as his gaze stayed fixed on the half-finished contract before him. He didn't need to see the reaction, for he already knew exactly what was happening, and he had been waiting for this moment. Slowly, he stood and turned to face the man who'd spoken. His voice remained even, neither raised nor trembling, a quiet resolve born from having endured far too much. I'm not helped because someone thinks I'm important. I'm helped because I own this place. The room seemed to lose all its air in one collective breath. Ross Mitchell stiffened on the spot. Megan Lowell, the receptionist, lowered her eyes to her keyboard. Sales staff in the background stopped typing, stopped speaking, and all turned to look at them. My name is Malcolm Reed. I own this dealership, he declared, then turned to Ross. And I didn't come here to be served. I came here to see the truth. The statement sent the room into an even deeper silence. Ross stammered, I didn't know. I didn't mean to. That's exactly the problem, Malcolm cut him off, his gaze not angry but deeply disappointed. You didn't mean it, yet you still did it. He then slowly walked to the center of the showroom, where the light streaming through the glass revealed every face and every sidelong glance of avoidance. He pointed toward the door, where Jalen Brooks, the young black man who had recently walked away, had been standing. I saw a young man standing there for 10 minutes with no greeting, no inquiry. I saw a white couple being attended to from the very first moment, with water, smiles, and the friendliness that I, in my jeans, muddy boots, and sun-beaten face, did not receive. I am not an exception. I am the example. Proof that every complaint over the past 2 months isn't an exaggeration, but a live reality happening right before our eyes. No one dared interrupt. No one dared contradict him. They all knew he was right. Fixing his gaze on Ross Mitchell, Malcolm continued, I'm not buying this truck anymore. Not because it's any bad, a truck is fine, but because you have made me not want to sign anything that bears the mark of your service. Ross, visibly panicked, stuttered, We're almost at the contract. Malcolm picked up his pen. Instead of signing, he drew a clear straight line through the signature line. You're not selling this truck, Ross. I was ready to buy as soon as I walked in, but you've just given me every reason to change my mind. Ross took a step back. You mean, you're fired, effective immediately. There was no outcry, no argument, only a crushing silence that weighed like a stone on everyone's chest. Craig Denton, the financial manager, appeared silently behind the reception without a word. No need to call HR, Malcolm stated calmly. I'll handle this myself. Ross Mitchell offered no reply. No one demanded he leave the showroom, yet the look in everyone's eyes said enough. He no longer belonged there. Malcolm then turned his attention to the employees scattered around. His eyes met each one as if imprinting his next words deep into their memories. If you think your job here is only about selling cars, you're mistaken. Your job is to serve people. Everyone, without discrimination. His tone softened into a personal confession. I built this place not just to make a profit. I built it so that everyone who walks in wouldn't have to prove their worth, They'd be respected from the very first moment. But if I have to break everything down to rebuild it, then I will. And that was only the beginning of that day, for what he was about to hear next would not only validate his fears, but also unleash a quiet earthquake within the very organization he once believed was in order. Just as Malcolm finished his sentence and prepared to leave, a voice came from behind. Not angry, not mocking, but laden with repressed skepticism and simmering frustration. You think you're teaching us a lesson? Acting all noble to feel superior? You can't fire someone just because your feelings are hurt. It was Nick Harmon, the white man who had earlier complained about the wait. He stood with arms folded, his eyes unflinching, his tone challenging. Malcolm paused. He didn't turn immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes for a few seconds, as if holding back a rising tide of emotion. Then he turned back, his gaze steady and free of anger. Only the calm resolve of a man who has suffered too much. "I'm not firing Ross because of my emotions," he said clearly, each word deliberate. "I'm firing him because he doesn't know how to treat people with dignity, and there is a vast difference between the two." Nick scoffed and shook his head. "Come on, just because he didn't treat you right doesn't mean that's discrimination. Maybe he was tired, maybe it was just a bad day. Don't drag race into this." Malcolm moved closer. Not too fast, not too aggressive, just reducing the gap so his words carried weight in the quiet space. "You know, I wish I could believe it was just a bad day, that I was the exception rather than the rule. But I have 3 emails from 3 different customers, all Black or Latino, telling me exactly what I witnessed today. No greetings, no proper assistance, not being treated as a real customer. And today, I saw it unfold, yet again." He pointed toward the showroom. "I saw a young black man waiting at the door with no acknowledgement. I saw him hesitate for a few seconds before leaving without a word. Not once, not twice, but as part of an ongoing pattern of systematic indifference." The room fell silent. Nick struggled to keep a neutral expression as he said, "So what?" "That doesn't prove anything. It could be a coincidence. Maybe it was just attitude. You're blowing this out of proportion by making it a racial issue." Malcolm lifted his head, his voice taking on a firmer, more resolute tone, yet not a trace of bitterness. "You really don't know, do you? You have no idea what it feels like to walk into a room and feel the temperature drop because of your skin color. You have no idea what it's like to have your profession questioned before even being greeted. You have no idea what it's like to have contract terms explained as if you can't read them." He paused and shook his head, a wry, bitter smile briefly crossing his face. "And maybe you never will. But don't stand there pretending none of this exists, especially when you've witnessed it with your own eyes." Nick said nothing further. His eyes darted around the room, as if seeking allies, but no one spoke. No one could deny what had just transpired. Malcolm surveyed the room once more, not just at Nick, but everyone present. The silent employees behind their desks, the customers who had frozen in place, each face mixed with confusion, embarrassment, and awakening. "I didn't grow up in luxury," he said softly but clearly. "My mother cleaned rooms in roadside motels. My father poured concrete until his back gave out. They had no connections, no special favors, only self-respect and calloused hands. They taught me to work hard without excuses, and I made no excuses, even when I was called slurs, when I saw others having their cars locked as I passed by, when I was followed like a shoplifter in a supermarket." His voice dropped, not in weakness, but in the weight of his truth. "I overcame it. I built something of my own. But I swear I won't let anyone else suffer that silence any longer. I won't allow people to walk into the place I built and feel unworthy, unclean, or undeserving of proper service." There was nothing left to say. Nick remained silent, slowly turning and leaving the showroom. No apologies, no backward glance. Malcolm then returned his gaze to the frozen employees. He looked at each of them as if to imprint his final words deep into their minds. This place needs change. And that change begins right now. Just as it seemed the story had ended, a soft, unexpected voice echoed from the back of the room, not from a customer, not from management, but from someone no one saw coming, about to plunge the room into complete, resounding silence. In the thick stillness of the showroom, heavy with unsaid truths and downcast eyes, a voice rose from the back. Not loud, but clear, like a single drop breaking the surface of tense water. "Mr. Reed." Malcolm turned. The voice had come from a corner few ever noticed, near the service counter where only back-office staff usually passed through. The speaker was a young woman, early 20s, hair tied back neatly, slim frame in a light blue company shirt. She stood straight, but her eyes betrayed hesitation. Malcolm looked at her closely, slowly recognizing the face. Kayla Simmons, right?" She nodded. "Yes, I work in admin part-time, mostly handling paperwork, contracts, invoices, that sort of thing." Malcolm gave her space to speak, and she did. "I've been here almost a year, and I've seen what you talked about today, and things you haven't." The room shifted slightly, not visibly, but enough to feel. A few heads turned in her direction. "I've seen how some people react when someone with darker skin walks in, the way their tone changes, how quickly they look away, the excuses they make to pass that customer off to someone else." She paused for a breath, then went on. "Once, I tried to say something to a manager, gently, just a comment, but I was told, that's not your concern. Just focus on what you're paid to do. So I stayed quiet." Her gaze swept across familiar faces that suddenly felt distant in the moment of truth. "I kept thinking someone else would notice, that someone higher up would speak, but I guess everyone thought the same. So no one said anything." Malcolm stepped slowly toward her, not to pressure, but to be present. When he stood in front of her, he nodded once. "Thank you for no longer staying silent." Kayla looked him in the eye. Her voice dropped, but held firm. Today needed to be said. "I couldn't wait anymore." Malcolm turned to face the team, now gathered closely, breath held in collective awareness. "I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came to see clearly what lies behind polite apologies and lowered heads." He glanced toward Megan, the receptionist, still staring at her screen, face pale. "You knew something was wrong too, didn't you?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod without looking up. "Why didn't you say anything?" Her reply was barely audible, almost like a confession. "I was afraid of losing my job." Malcolm took a slow breath. "I understand, but that silence, it's what keeps injustice alive. The longer we let it sit, the deeper the roots grow. Until one day, we look around and realize the place we believed was fair is just a maze of quiet prejudice." He paused again, his eyes cutting through the stillness. "The responsibility doesn't fall on one person. It falls on all of us. And if we're going to fix it, we fix it together." Every word dropped like weight onto the tiled floor, anchoring not just blame, but the possibility of something better. Then he turned to the contract table, still sitting there, unsigned, the pen resting across the slashed signature line. He picked up his business card, holding it between two fingers. "This card doesn't make me smarter than anyone else. It just gives me a bit of power, but that power means nothing if I don't use it to fix what should have been right from the beginning." His eyes drifted toward Ross Mitchell's empty desk. "I didn't do this to make an example. I did it to change everything, from today onward." He turned back to Kayla, voice softening. "I need someone on the inside, someone willing to speak up when something's wrong. Are you willing?" Kayla blinked, her hand nervously gripping the hem of her shirt. Then she nodded. "I'm ready." Malcolm smiled, the first genuine smile since the morning began. "Good, we'll start there." He turned to the rest of the room. "Tomorrow morning we meet. Mandatory. We're rewriting the way we work, not just on paper, but in how we show up every single day, for every single person who walks through that door." He stopped. His gaze passed through the glass walls to the blinding sun outside. This time, he didn't shield his eyes. He stepped into the heat, the Texas sun bearing down on his worn canvas shirt, like it always had. When his phone buzzed in his pocket, it was a message from Tasha Green. "Everything okay?" He typed back just 5 words. "Not yet. But it will be." Because there was one more thing left to do, something that would finally close the circle that silence had kept open far too long. Malcolm Reed didn't rush back to the old Ford Ranger sitting still under the sun. He kept walking, slowly, across the lot, his dusty boots scraping against the hot pavement. He wasn't heading to his office, not to a meeting room, but to the sidewalk across the street, where something had happened that no one in the showroom dared mention, a young man left behind in silence. Malcolm crossed the road, scanning both directions like a man searching for something more important than contracts, status, or profit. Then he saw him. Under the faint shade of a bus stop sign, Jalen Brooks was still there, slim frame, worn gray hoodie, a folder clutched tight to his chest. He wore headphones, eyes fixed on the road where no bus was coming anytime soon. Malcolm picked up his pace, calling out across the street, "Hey, son!" Jalen startled, pulling off his headphones, eyeing Malcolm with both caution and curiosity. Malcolm raised a hand, signaling, "I'm not some random guy you need to worry about." "I saw you earlier at the showroom," Malcolm said, now closer. "You came to look at a car, didn't you?" Jalen nodded slightly, shoulders shrinking. "Yeah, but I wasn't expecting much. I never do." "You've been to other dealerships this week?" "This is the fifth one," Jalen replied, half smirking, but it wasn't a smile. "I'm just looking for a used car, not asking for much. But people glance at me once and that's it. They turn away." Malcolm said nothing. The silence stretched, long enough for them to hear the hum of a truck far off in the distance. Then he spoke, softly, like a father soothing a wound long ignored. "My name's Malcolm. I own that dealership." Jalen's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. And I didn't come today to supervise. I came to see with my own eyes what the people I trusted have done with the place I built. And I saw it." Jalen gave a short laugh, this one tinged with bitterness. "I thought you were just another guy getting treated like me." Malcolm nodded. "I made sure of it, so I could feel exactly what you feel." The two stood there, under the midday sun. 2 generations, same skin, same experience of being quietly dismissed. "You still need a car, right?" Jalen nodded again, still unsure what to make of the moment. "Then come back with me, but this time, not as a customer, as a guest. I want you to meet Kayla, someone I trust. She'll help you find the right car at a fair price. More importantly, you'll be treated like someone worth listening to." Jalen hesitated. Then, after a breath, he nodded, not out of politeness, but genuine agreement. They crossed the street together, shoulder to shoulder, no big words needed. And when the showroom doors opened again, something had changed. Not the lighting, not the decor, but the eyes of the people inside. They saw Malcolm return, but this time, he wasn't alone. Kayla Simmons was already at the front desk. When she saw Jalen, she smiled. Not a forced smile, not a professional grin, but a quiet apology for the moment they missed earlier. She reached out her hand, and this time, no one looked away. Malcolm didn't walk forward. He stepped back, arms crossed, just watching. He saw Jalen sit down, saw Kayla open her computer, ask him questions with care, begin typing. He couldn't hear their voices, but he knew. There was no judgment in her tone, no bias in her questions, just a real conversation between 2 human beings. And for Malcolm, that was the beginning he needed to see. This time, when he stepped back out through those glass doors, there was nothing more to do, nothing left to say. He walked toward his old Ranger, opened the door, started the engine, and sat there for a few seconds. No background music, no applause, just the steady hum of the motor and warm wind pushing through the cracked window. Because today, he didn't just make a decision about a car or an employee. He made a decision about the legacy he wanted to leave behind. A place where no one has to prove their worth just to be treated with basic decency. A place where silence would no longer survive. He shifted the gear. The truck rolled forward, slowly, steadily, and in the scorching Texas sun, he disappeared toward the horizon. Just a man who didn't need a title to know who he was, only the conviction to live by what his parents once taught him. Never forget where you came from, and use whatever power you have to pull others forward with you. The old Ford Ranger crept out of the parking lot, its wheels crunching over the red dust that blanketed the dealership's exit lane. Malcolm Reed didn't turn on the radio. He didn't need music to fill the silence. There were no speeches playing in his head, no slow-motion scenes with dramatic close-ups, just the low rumble of the engine and the warm wind slipping through the window crack. But inside, something had changed, deeply, permanently, irreversibly. He wasn't thinking about having fired Ross Mitchell. He wasn't congratulating himself for speaking up in front of the entire room. What he did today wasn't about being a hero. It was simply what should have been done long ago. It wasn't impulsive. It was the result of a lifetime spent quietly observing, remembering. He remembered his mother's eyes, the woman who scrubbed nameless motel rooms, her hands calloused from bleach and scrubbing, but who always walked tall through the lobby. He remembered his father, the man who poured concrete under the burning Texas sun, who came home bent-backed every night, always saying, "Tomorrow's got to be better." They never taught him how to demand. They taught him how to stand up. Every time he was dismissed, left out, quietly shut out. And he had stood up. Step by step, he built his own business, gave opportunities to hundreds of people, created a space he believed was fairer. But today, he realized something. Fairness doesn't come from slogans on a wall. It comes from every glance, every greeting, every time you serve a human being like they truly matter. And when he saw Jalen Brooks walking away in silence, just like he once had, he knew. It was time to stop waiting for someone else to speak up. If not him, then who? He stopped at a red light, hand resting on the wheel, eyes fixed forward. A child stood at the bus stop across the street, holding his mother's hand. Both dressed in work clothes. Malcolm saw himself in that boy's eyes. He didn't need words to understand the feeling, the quiet hope that someone, anyone, would see you, would acknowledge you, even just once. The light turned green. The truck rolled on. Malcolm knew he couldn't fix everything in a day, but he could start in one place, the place with his name on it, and he wouldn't stop there. Because what he did today wasn't just a moral gesture, it was a promise, a quiet oath from a man once judged by muddy boots, but who never let it shake his faith in fairness. On the dashboard, his phone buzzed, a message from Kayla. Jalen found his car. He smiled, and this time, it wasn't to hide the pain. Malcolm didn't reply. He just gripped the steering wheel and smiled. Because he knew. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The beginning of something bigger than any billboard or sales report. A culture where people are seen, heard, and treated like they matter. Not because they're rich, not because they wear suits, but because they exist. And that alone is enough. The next morning, the Texas sun stretched long shadows across the glass facade of Reed Auto Group. Everything outside looked the same. Rows of cars neatly lined up, Chevrolet flags fluttering in the breeze, early customers trickling in like any other day. But inside, where no outsider could see, change had begun. And this time, no one could pretend it wasn't happening. The meeting room wasn't big, but today it was full. No one showed up late. No one made excuses. Malcolm Reed walked in, no suit, no tie, still in his rolled-up sleeves and dusty boots. But today, he wasn't there to inspect. He was there to lead. He didn't need a microphone, no slideshows. He just stood tall, looked each person in the eye, and began, "What we sell here isn't cars. That's just the product. What we really offer is trust." Every eye stayed on him. Not because he was the boss, but because the day before, they'd all seen it clearly. He was the only one who had broken the silence they had all quietly chosen for the sake of comfort. Trust isn't built with brochures or price tags. It's built by how we greet a customer when they walk through that door, by looking them in the eye and actually listening, no matter what they're wearing, what they look like, or what accent they speak with. Malcolm placed a stack of papers on the table, complaints Tasha Green had submitted over the past 2 months. "I ignored these warnings. That was my mistake," he said without flinching. "But now I've seen it, and I won't let it continue." He turned to Kayla Simmons, now seated at the head of the table, notebook open in front of her. "Kayla will be working with me to lead a team that reviews every part of our service process, from first contact to how we record customer feedback. What she sees, what she feels, will now officially shape how we run this place." Kayla nodded, not shyly, not hesitantly, like the day before. She knew now. Her voice carried weight. And it won't stop at internal changes. Each quarter, we'll open this showroom for a community listening session where anyone, whether they've bought a car or not, can come share their experience. We'll listen. We'll take notes. And we'll act. A few employees raised their eyebrows, not in resistance, but in surprise. No one had imagined this business would one day open its doors to criticism. But Malcolm had expected it. He simply said, "No one grows by plugging their ears. We only grow when we're willing to hear the hardest things." He paused for a moment, then continued. This time, softer, more personal. "I didn't come from prestige. I didn't have a network backing me, but I had parents who taught me that if you're given a chance, you better turn it into a chance for someone else." He looked at every face in the room. "I have the power to fire someone, but I also have the power to lift someone up if they truly want to change. And if you're sitting here today because you want that, then we start again, together." The room fell silent, not from fear, but because everyone felt it. They were being handed a real opportunity to do right. A hand went up. It was Dylan Hayes, the young salesman who had so professionally welcomed Travis and Lauren, but had ignored Jalen. "I want to say something, Mr. Reed." His voice was small, but sincere. "Yesterday I saw that young black guy come in, and I almost walked over, but he wasn't driving anything fancy, didn't look like a buyer, so I turned away. I realized I was wrong, and if there's a chance, I want to make it right." Malcolm nodded. "You do have a chance, and from today on, making it right isn't optional. It's your responsibility." He looked around once more. "I don't need a perfect team. I need people who know they're not perfect, but never stop striving for better." The door opened as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Everyone walked out, not faster, but firmer. They weren't just leaving a meeting. They were leaving behind an old chapter and stepping into a new one of their own. And just as Malcolm returned to his office, his phone rang. It was Jalen Brooks. He didn't say much, just one sentence. "I never thought a day like yesterday could happen. I'm grateful. And if you ever need help with that community listening thing, I'm in." Malcolm smiled. His voice was quiet, steady, like the start of a new day. "You don't have to be in. You already are." Because sometimes the greatest legacy doesn't come from million-dollar deals, but from the moment an ordinary person is seen, heard, and treated the way they deserve. And sometimes real change begins with one person brave enough to stay standing when everyone else turns away. Malcolm Reed didn't change the world in a day, but he changed a culture, starting with his own showroom, not with slogans, not with punishments, but by listening, showing up, and taking action. He reminded us all that fairness doesn't come from promises. It comes from the smallest actions, repeated every day. From a corporate culture expert's point of view, what Malcolm did wasn't just leadership, it was leading with humanity. And when a CEO is brave enough to face the truth, that company doesn't just get stronger, it becomes worthy of the community's trust.